omni-channel marketing manager at Gray Media, which is a publicly traded broadcast company. So they're quite large. They have over 8,000 employees. Then next, Ashley. She's the brand manager at Blue Leopard, which is a small agency here in Mobile, and they have, what, 10 to 12 that you work with, coworkers? Six. So again, as you all know, the smaller you are, the more hats you wear, and the more important it is to be, using as many tools as you can, which I'm sure we'll hear. And then Caleb works at Good Giant, which is a mid-sized agency, as the production director. So I wanted to start off and just ask you to kind of each take a turn and tell us about how often you use AI and what your preferred platform is.
Hi everyone, like Kate said, my name's Ashley. I'm with Blue Leopard Agency, and I use AI almost daily for one thing or another. Most often, I would say I use ChatGPT, mostly for ideation, outlining, breaking down large blocks of text into smaller blocks of text, things like that, just to make my process go a lot faster.
Hey guys. Sorry, not good with microphones. I interact with AI regularly, almost to the point where it feels like too much, maybe. We all interact with it on a daily basis. Pretty much all the software we're using at this point. And I think it's important to understand what AI is. Maybe that can be part of the conversation too, because I think there's a lot of people that it's like this nebulous thing that is good for us, or this thing that can help us. And really and truly, AI is being integrated into everything. It's in our cars, it's in our software programs we use on a daily basis, our email. So it's everywhere. And really and truly, I use it every day, all the time, everywhere, any way possible. The most direct interface I have with it is ChatGPT as well. I wish they would call it a new name. They're going to call the next one Strawberry or something like that. I interact with ChatGPT just because it's the most accessible, the least expensive. It seems like it has the most capability at this point.
Hello. So I also use some form of AI every day. So I am the grandpa on the panel, both literally and figuratively. My kids make fun of me because I'm that dude that, from across the room was shouting, "Smart speaker! Smart speaker!" So I'm still learning the technology as well. But I think it's fascinating, and my mind is just constantly blown by how rapidly things are advancing and changing. But I definitely use some aspect of it every day. And then from my perspective, representing Gray Media Group, I think we take more of a conservative approach to usage on a day-to-day basis on the job for various reasons. The primary one being that there is no fingerprint right now associated with AI. So when you start looking at implications tied to protecting intellectual property, source material, things of that nature, we prefer to err on the side of caution to make sure that we are protecting, number one, our viewers, our employees, as well as our partners. We want to make sure that we're protecting sensitive information. We're not sharing that blindly, and we're trying to be good stewards and good parents or grandparents of this child that has been birthed that we cannot put back.
Yeah, and I think when we originally started talking about this, it was interesting, as I had mentioned and what I was getting at originally, two of our board members, or our panel members they work at, more privately owned organizations where there's it's a little bit of the Wild I feel like probably a lot of people in this room fall into that category. What's interesting about what Gray is doing is, as I mentioned, they're much larger and they have to have policies and procedures in place. So can you tell us a little bit more about how, I know we had talked about, you have more proprietary use that you're using. You're not just hopping onto ChatGPT.
Right, so we have all employees, all Gray employees, and I see my colleagues here in the audience, we all have to go through corporate training, compliance training. But our policy as a company is we will not use AI for content generation or content creation, period. We want humans to be the originators of content, especially from a news gathering standpoint. I have a friend, I lived down in South Florida from 2004 up until the start of the pandemic. And a good friend of mine is in the space. And we had a conversation just about, wouldn't it be great if you could have an AI avatar that was your personal news anchor, that delivered news of the day to you in your preferred voice. So let's say you're left-leaning or right-leaning or center. And he said, oh God, no, you don't want to do that. Just think of all of the potential issues and pitfalls if now you're turning the slant over to AI to adjust it to your preferences. What does that mean? How are you suppressing information, changing information to model it to something that you prefer? So those are all concerns that Gray has that we make sure that we're trying to follow and again, being good shepherds and good parents of the technology.
Yeah, I think part of that, and that's something that we've discussed also is, thinking about morale, like the idea that the organization's large enough that they have these processes in place, and then so many of us, there are no policies. Our organizations have not come up with or have outlined what we can and cannot do, which is a little frightening, but it also gives us a lot of wiggle room. So that's something that I really throw out there as a business owner or somebody who is in charge of a group of people, instilling some sort of morality or, where is that line? And I think that's something we talked a lot about as far as where do we as humans draw the line at what we will and will not do, because the laws are so vague right now. And when we talk about laws, that's a whole other thing that none of us really even know at this point, because there really aren't any. So that's a really big thing that we've discussed a lot. Caleb, do you have thoughts on that?
Are you following what's happening in California right now? I think the timing of this panel discussion is perfect.
What's happening?
So SB 1047, check into it. So right now,
The governor
of California, they're pushing a bill through
to potentially have guardrails in place for large-scale AI or frontier AI. And it puts a lot of constraints related to compliance, modeling, and if someone were to use AI and it turned out for nefarious purposes or if it was harmful, then the company who created the model would be liable. So you have companies that are looking to relocate their businesses and their headquarters out of California. But the way the bill is written, if you operate in California, you're still on the hook. So Elon Musk has come out and he's on the side of it, he's in favor of it. But the team behind ChatGPT, they're against it. But that's something that could happen before the end of the week. And it's something that could have broad implications from a federal level. But I don't know, it's something to watch for sure.
I find it funny that Elon Musk is on the side of it. I don't know if you'll heard or not, but they just dropped the latest version of Grok. And it can make realistic images that are all parody of real people. So there's tons of Elon Musk memes on the internet internet right now that are just mocking them. Obviously political memes, stuff like that. That's pretty much being used as satire, but if it's defamatory and hurtful and you break the law, yeah, Elon Musk and Grok, it's product potentially be liable. He's going to probably have to change his product. It's interesting you brought that up because Adobe, if you guys, I don't know how many of you use generative fill and image generation in Photoshop and that kind of thing, but it oftentimes won't allow you to make images of people that are real or they're too close to like quote unquote real references, just because of that, because they don't want to get sued. And back to the point you were making, Dave, I think the rules are the same. So just because we have this new thing that makes it easier doesn't mean that now we're entitled to misbehave with it, right? So like if I, say something mean or hateful and I break the law, I should be held accountable no matter how I'm paid, right? The same goes for, the way we pitch to our clients. You were asking me, do we tell our clients this was made with AI? And my response was, we don't tell them necessarily how we make things now. So why is it any different, right? It's just a tool that makes us smarter, faster, stronger, and reality is just a reflection of the same ideas, just in a different way.
Well, and you should probably clarify too that it's not that we're necessarily creating work that we're selling. And I think we've talked about this a lot about.
We use it mostly in ideation,
Right.
like getting us
Exactly.
started. It's
Like,
not the final product.
yeah, so I think what's interesting about how Ashley's using it is, she's really using it in a way that is like generating ideas, and I feel like that's really the best way to start. Like if you haven't, like depending on your level of access or how often you've used it or how much you've adopted it, the best way of really starting to get your feet wet in it is testing it out like that. Can you kind of go into further detail on how you're using it and like what you found to be the best ways, and then where do you draw the line?
Yeah, so we, like I said, use it for ideation or making things that we've created smaller. Like if I've written a full blog that's 300 words, I might put the blog in that to create smaller bites, summaries to use for social media posts. That's all content that we originally wrote, but we're using AI to expedite the process of disseminating that information. Or we'll use it for creating something in the background that features original artwork and creative ideas. So our graphic designers, like Braxton has talked about using it to create a background to feature branding that we've made. The background is AI, and that's not consequential really, it just enhances the original product that our agency has created.
I think what's interesting about that is we are, and it gets back to what we were saying, we are monitoring, we're self-monitoring all of this currently. We are all, our morality is saying, where do we draw the line here? We are not willing to use AI fully and sell that. We're all kind of using it to enhance things that already exist or to ideate and...
Yeah, and then we also, anything that's proprietary information for any of our clients, if it's not available publicly on their website, you shouldn't be putting it into ChatGPT. Because you're feeding proprietary information to something that's using it for other purposes that someone else is using for their competition, basically. So my personal rule is if it's not publicly available already, using tools most people already have, Google, the newspaper, Facebook, anything like that, and it's supposed to be visible that way, you shouldn't be putting it in ChatGPT.
Yeah. And you're using the free version, right? Caleb, can you talk a little bit, you've been training a ChatGPT, like call your work assistant?
So to me, that's one of the coolest parts about ChatGPT, is that you have to have a paid subscription, but $20 a month, you can essentially train what they call a GPT, which is just essentially just a customizable model to perform tasks. And right now it's still kind of limited. We're still in the precipice of figuring out what it can and can't do. But in theory, you can feed a GPT your brand decks, your process documents, templates for business papers. You can give it organizational charts. You can give it really anything you want. I mean, it's a large language model, and it is best used to analyze data. So it'll analyze just about any data you give it, remember it, and then reference it later. So yeah, that was step one. I'm now like on to training other GPTs to do other tasks. But yeah, I started using it just in general. I'm like, what can this thing do? And I was telling some of my colleagues, just little things you would be surprised it could be useful for. Like, for instance, analyzing a piece of music and telling you like key attributes about it. In the event you have brain block, little things like summarizing, short decks and breaking out copy and giving you the key points. Say you're tired at 5 o'clock and somebody sent out a long memo, you can have it summarized into key points just like that. So the time savings there are innumerable, and once you get in the habit of using it regularly, you wound up just feeding it all your data, which is kind of scary. At the same time,
To be honest, we're already giving everything our data already.
I know. We can talk about like being careful with our data and all that stuff, but the irony of the AI is it works the best when you give it everything. So.
And I think
That's where it's really interesting too. So we think that we're using Chat GPT and AI, but actually the tool is using us. So we have to be very careful with how we approach it. We think we're using social media platforms, but the social media platforms are using us to identify our preferences. We're training it to get smarter by how we use it. And the same thing is happening with ChatGPT or any other AI tool. And I didn't answer your original question when you were saying, what are we doing at Gray to leverage the technology? So from a sales, marketing, and advertising standpoint, we're leveraging AI tools to help put together presentations. I work with the best account, rep staff that I've worked with, and I've been in the business for about 30 years. So shout out to all my great people. And I know for them, developing presentations, it's a task. But our corporate team has created a tool where we can take meeting notes, client needs analysis notes, upload them into a system, and it generates a proposal within, under a minute? 30 seconds? Something like that, seconds. But that includes photography, any video components. The next iteration, or the next thing that we're about to introduce as a company, and this will be new to the team, and that's leveraging AI for training purposes. So to make sure that we're overcoming objections and really being the best consultants for our clients, what about having a virtual, trainer that has all of this data that we've accumulated through meetings and interactions. And so we have all this data that is within the Gray ecosystem, 114 markets across the country. So the virtual trainer can now role play with our sales staff so that they're smarter, faster, stronger, and it's more realistic. It's not as, intimidating or uncomfortable to be sitting across from a sales manager. You have someone that identifies as a virtual, general manager of a car dealership, the owner of a small boutique. And so now that data that we have using Gemini as a closed source tool to help train our teams.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting is, so like with Gray being as large as they are, they do have this closed source. They have people that have been dedicated to over however many, the last 18 months building this for them. So they have this proprietary thing that can do all these amazing things. And then you look at what Caleb is doing and he's hand cranking it. you know, and he's doing what any of us can do on our own, even if it's not for work-related things, even if it's personal. I know, I think what was interesting, Ashley had mentioned when we were talking earlier about how she uses AI for work specifically, and her partner uses it very specifically for private use, and they don't switch. So, and obviously we're here to talk about Gen AI and what we do from an industry standpoint, but personally, it is amazing. It's an amazing tool. I had to plan my son's birthday party, and it was super complex. It was like a movie marathon, and it just pumped out my schedule, like so fast, and it would have taken me 30 minutes to do that. So I think it's interesting because, like, you know, the idea that you've got these larger organizations that have really spent time and money into developing them, and it's interesting to hear what they're doing, but we're not that far away from us personally or professionally being able to develop that ourselves, even at the very smallest level. Even if you're an entrepreneur and you are, you know, you don't have any staff, you can train a system like this to do all of these things. And that's part of, you know, why we wanted to have these conversations, is to open up the ideas and figure out, like, we all have access to the same technology essentially.
Yeah, I find it's a great first step to kind of get the ball rolling. One of the most notable things that I've used it for to great success is planning for events. Not just personal events, but events for a client that are massive 300 people events, 3-day events. And I have used that being a little bit younger, like, I don't even know where to start. Where do I even start with an event this big? And I asked ChatGPT, I'm like, okay, give me a schedule of when I need to have things done to have this conference on this day, this day, this day, and it spit out a 3-month long schedule of, okay, well, you need to have the venue decided by this, you need to have catering decided by this, you need to have all of your graphics and stuff out to the computer by this. And I can go and say, okay, well, my timeline's a little tighter than that, so I'm going to adjust and say, okay, I need this to be done a little bit quicker. And that was a great starting point for me as a brand manager, which basically equates to a project manager, in this case, to assign tasks to my team on a timeline that works for them but gets it done on time. And I can see the whole big picture, not just like what I touch. So I can be a better project manager and get things done on a good schedule. And it's not all last minute, because I can plan that far in advance for ChatGPT.
And so then you can use that going forward, right? Like, now you've got it in the system,
Yeah.
and ChatGPT knows exactly how many days you need in between each of your event or each of your deadlines, and you can just plug it in the next time.
Right, and even when it first spits out is not 100% accurate, I can say, well, I know that maybe this person needs a little bit more time to do that because their plate's a little heavy right now, and I can adjust it from there. It's never the end product. You know, but it's a great starting point, so I can go and see everything that could be in that project, and then adjust based on what my team can handle at that point in time.
How many music fans do we have in the house? Like, seriously. How about hip hop heads?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a hip hop junkie. I'm a Wu-Tang fan. Steve, no, I'm not talking to you, Siri. But we had an interesting conversation. I don't know how many of you have used some of the music generating AI tools that are out there. So I did one. I mean, it will create an original music track just from voice prompts. So a couple of the ones that I created, I was telling the panel, you know, create an original James Brown sounding vibe for business, and I just went on. I mean, it was funky. I mean, it was hitting hard. But the conversation is, okay, since there's no fingerprint tied to it, are we going to run into issues down the line if this is something that you can use? Because some of the tools allow you to use it for commercial purposes because it's original. But just like you had hip hop DJs back in the day sampling tracks and sampling music, and then hey, you got to stroke a check right now because this was my stuff. This was my intellectual property. Are we going to run into a situation where that's going to happen in the future? And it was a really interesting conversation because I know you're using some of those
Yeah, I'm super huge into music. It's kind of how I cut my teeth in production and paved the way to the rest. But the sample is black, so prove it, right? There's entire categories of law dedicated to copyright. People who study it religiously, and at the end of the day, if it's a ripoff, it's pretty obvious. Like, it's pretty clear. You know, I'm James Brown. I made this in 1978. It's right here on this recording, and it's in their recording. The interesting thing about the AI, which I don't know if y'all have seen this website called Udio, udio.com, but you can make custom music from text prompts. And it's, yeah, UDIO. And it's pretty amazing. If you've got, I think, an M1 processor on your computer, it'll crank out a song in seconds. But the thing is, to your point, is how do you know if it's already copyrighted? Or somebody has already created this, and you, at the end of the day, the easiest way to check it is to use AI to check it, right? And unbeknownst to us, years ago, some genius created this AI that a lot of us have on our phone called Shazam. And the people that invented Shazam created algorithms to analyze music and sound, and if it's a close enough match to something that's in its catalog, it'll flag it. Well, this website Udio, to me, the litmus test is Shazam it, and in my tests, it's all legit. So it's pretty cool. It'll actually crank out songs that have lyrics. You can write lyrics. You can tell it what kind of singer to have, styles, all that stuff.
And that was, so from Gray's standpoint, their fear is, there's no way I'm going to have Shazam be my lead witness in my defense. So that's why they're like kind of holding up on it.
It's like, it can like an attorney, yeah. But at the same time, like, if Shazam doesn't recognize it, who's gonna flag it, right? Like, is YouTube or Instagram or wherever you post the content gonna flag it? No, it'll pass. And that's not to say that, it'll phase out real music or real musicians or any of that stuff. There's always a place for that, just because, there's always a place for good ideas. And that's one of our mantras lately. We, in our business, we deal with a lot of creatives, especially designers and writers, artists of one degree or another, and they're really paranoid they're going to get, essentially phased out by generative AI. And my response to them is always, just because it's easier to execute doesn't, mean there's not any value in the ideas. There may be actually more value in the ideas now than there ever has been, just because good ideas still reign supreme, right? Just because it's easier for me to make doesn't make it a good idea or a bad idea or legal or illegal. A good idea still has weight.
Yeah, I think it's
The advertising community, we should all feel really special because we are really the pioneers that help push this whole thing along when you think about it, right? Google, this is what, 20 years since they went public this year? And their whole business model changed and was built around advertising. It was the advertising and the ability to learn and get in front of specific audiences that made them special, that made Facebook special. But it also made Facebook public enemy number one when you look at what was happening with all of the data and usage of data during the election cycle. So while we should feel really special that advertising is really the thing that helped push this along extremely fast, we also have a huge responsibility to find ways to prevent echo chambers and bias. When you look at the misuse of targeting, let's just look at the tobacco industry and the ways that they leverage big data without AI to target African American communities with menthol cigarettes. Like the amount of money that was dumped into it to study and to make sure that they could get cigarettes that were easy to smoke, that were harder to get rid of in the hands of people that, it was predatory. So we need to make sure that we're not falling into that same trap using tools that are, faster, that make it easier for us to do, and we lose sight of, the responsibility that we have as the advertising community to make sure that we're doing right by the community.
And speaking more to people who are inherently biased and we're always using AI, we're training AI to be biased. So from personal experience, I've had someone from a client ask me, do we have like a group ChatGPT that I can use to put all of these resumes in for this job? And I have to say, do not do that. You cannot do that. It's the free version of ChatGPT. You're going to have everyone's information in there. They did not give you permission to do that. You cannot do that. So again, like what you've been saying, Joseph, you just have to there's a responsibility to be right about it and know that people are inherently biased. And especially in the workforce, if you're going to use AI, you can't use it in a way that's going to further that bias that already exists, that there are laws in place to prevent, that you're just kind of getting around because you've kind of made the path a little bit longer, shorter for you, but longer to get discovered that it's biased.
I think generative AI gets most of the press. We can create images, potentially videos, sound, voices, research papers, with a click. But honestly, just based on what I've seen in my research and stuff like that, really, that side of it is not that accessible without, major investment still. It'll get there the next couple of years. To me, the most amazing thing about it is its ability to analyze and understand large data sets. And that's how marketers are using it. They're using it to target each and every single one of us. And I say they, I'm one of them. But they're using it to target each and every single one of us wherever they can reach us, mainly through our devices, whether it's our computer phones, pads. They're also using it in programmatic advertising. The AIs know when eyeballs are on televisions or when you're looking at a certain website, et cetera, and it'll feed you ads that are more relevant to you than ever. Which as a consumer, I kind of appreciate to some degree, because now my time spent on social media or the internet or whatever, I'm actually getting ads that are relevant to me. At the same time, we've got to be careful about being manipulated by it. And as consumers, aware that there's always that potential. And then as advertisers or marketers, aware that we need to keep it ethical and within the bounds of the law.
Is there anything else you feel like we need to cover? I was going to open it up to you all, and I don't really want to open it up necessarily to questions. I feel like, again, this is a conversation. If anybody, you don't have to have a question. If you just have a comment or something that you find really interesting or something that you've read about, the whole purpose of this is to have a discussion. So I wanted to open it up to you all. I can pass the mic around if you have any comments, questions, or thoughts, and then after that we'll just split out, and continue the conversation in smaller groups where maybe you are more comfortable. Yes, sir, come here.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Chris on the court side.
What's up, Chris?
You alluded to it, and I appreciate all the insight what you all are doing from agency and the business perspective. How are platforms implementing AI? The Googles, the X, the Meta, TikTok. Obviously, it's a huge part of their business model now. or who the audiences are?
I'm not an expert, but I do know, I mean, I've never worked for Facebook or Google or, any of those other social media platforms, but I do know that when people refer to quote unquote the algorithm is an AI that is trained to learn your preferences. And it's as easy as just tracking what you're doing when you're using the apps, what you're clicking on, how much time you spend. It can tell where your eyes go on your screen. It can tell you, all sorts of different, KPIs or data sets on your use. And then it can tailor the content that it feeds you based on,
I'd say one of the most effective social media platforms that's using an AI like that to filter is TikTok.
Right.
My For You page is on point.
Right.
On point.
Right. And I do this weird thing where I don't want to disrupt the algorithm. So I'm aware of what I'm doing, so I'm not going to do something atypical and just mess it all up, because I'm enjoying my time.
I mean, one of the things that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna post a playlist. So I don't always chat GPT stuff. My kids make fun of me that I still YouTube it and GTS it. But I found some amazing videos that I'll share through LinkedIn. And some of it addresses what you're talking about. What are some of the platforms doing? And to your point, monitoring eye movements, but you also have companies, and some of it being tied to TikTok, where they're analyzing not just eye movements, but facial expressions to then learn whether or not you're happy or you're sad. So now the technology isn't just a predictive model, now it's being more empathetic. So it's understanding emotions. So that's something that Drew and I were talking about, is the technology, does it have feeling? It's able to understand feelings, or the analysis of it, and it's getting smarter in that regard, so it tailors the content, or it may feed you something that makes you happier. So it's interesting to see, and some of the videos that I'll share kind of cover what other platforms are doing, some of the dangers of it, and some of the benefits of it too. So it's not all bad. And it may sound like we're talking about negative aspects of it, but I think it's really, really cool to see.
I get stupid excited about it just because the light bulbs start going off. And that's what happened for me when I first got comfortable using ChatGPT. Was the world opened up. And somebody who, I don't see myself as uber talented or uber smart, super articulate or any of that stuff, but with a tool like that, you're telling me I can analyze all these financial spreadsheets in literally a click. They can tell me correlations and summaries and yada 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 of this massive stack of paperwork on my desk. I'm really thinking about feeding it to it. What's that? Yeah, so let me preface, I'm using the paid version of ChatGPT. Before I started doing this, via a conversation I was having with my boss, the first thing that she brought up was, have you heard about all these lawsuits about data being leaked and this and that? And it's that may be so, but it's most likely through the free versions of these accounts because they are sharing that data. When you, quote unquote, don't pay or something is free, usually the cost to you is your data. Well, supposedly the paid version of ChatGPT, all the data that they collect is supposed to be firewall and safe. Supposed to be. But through their terms of service, they assume liability. So in theory, if something damaging to you or to a client or to someone else got out, at least they assume liability, which absolves, it kind of makes me feel a little more calm about giving it information that may not be public. That being said, I'm not reckless. There are things that everybody knows could land us in, a lot of trouble. Getting fired from our jobs, number one. Number two, fired from a client relationship or a business relationship. Three, potentially fines or jail. So, you've got to use it just like any other tool pre-AI and use the same code of ethics.
This is just a follow-up question for you. I've only ever used the free version of ChatGPT and used it as like a text-based model. You mentioned uploading like grade text and financial reports. Is that like an upgrade that you're able to like import files into the paper, or how does that work?
So as of right now, I am usually using ChatGPT 3.5, which is the text base. They're kind of rolling out and letting you have some trials and like little tests of the 4.0, which you can upload Word documents, images, whatever, to read the text off of it or different volumes, so to speak. And of course, Caleb, I'm sure a lot of your stuff that's more closed source is a little bit more detailed, probably Joseph as well, since you're making presentations. The free version, I'll have to say, 3.5, I believe, is all text-based. The 4.0, you can add images, and then Joseph and Caleb will probably speak to different platforms, because I don't pay for that.
And I use the paid version of ChatGPT, so I can upload it'll take a PDF, a Word document, it'll take JPEGs, it'll take videos, audio files, screenshots. And that's one of the coolest part about it, is that if it doesn't understand the document or has a hard time interpreting the document that you gave it, you can feed it screenshots and it'll interpret the data off of an image. So you can give it an image of a spreadsheet or part of a spreadsheet, and it'll interpret that. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of other platforms too. We've been talking a ton about ChatGPT, but there's lots and lots of other platforms that are out there, and each one has different things that they're best at. Like one might be better at database, and another one might be better at the creative output. So I encourage everybody to just literally just Google what are all the platforms and what are they best at, and it will test them out, because so many of them are free.
If you bounce back and forth between the platforms, you see their biases. So Google is not going to refer you to some other source. It's going to tell you it's the best source. So it's interesting that way. But yeah.
And it's tools that we're using, but in addition to that, it's platforms for us to deliver marketing messages through that are all. It's all interesting. I mean, one of the videos that I saw was talking about voice recognition, and if you are using Alexa, let's say, and you sound stuffy, well, you sound like you have a cold. So now it's not only looking at, do you fit the profile for someone that's shopping for a car, but I need to serve Theraflu commercials to you because you're sniffling while you're saying something. It's getting crazy like that.
So for me, the other side is from video games. Generative, I don't care. I'm going to fight it for me. I use Midjourney. Because I don't have a graphic designer, so I use boards. And I've sold quite a few concepts with it. Although people's eyeballs are weird, you have to preface that by using AI from AI. The other side is the tool set. So I screwed up and shot some footage at Spreadsheet 48, shot it at 23, using AI. If you guys have ever slowed down video, if you ever slow down video, it looks like garbage water. It's got a frame rate. I ran through an AI model. I had perfect, no issue. Absolute perfect 48. I took it to 120. No issue. So that means super slow mode. It wasn't filmed that way to generate those frames. Additionally, I had a client that said no one's ever been able to film here because the audio is garbage. I have an AI model that copies the voice, studies it, makes a quick model, burns it, and actually recreates the audio, and it sounds like it's sound. So to me, the AI side is like the chat GPT and Midjourney. I use that stuff too. It's great. But when we start doing the tool set, that just saved me embarrassment, right? But it also made my product
introduce,
Yeah.
or is it?
So Topaz, which is everybody doing. So Topaz is the big one, you have to use paid one, the free one's garbage one. The audio one, there's two that we use. The one that I would suggest you explore is, again, Adobe, and it's podcast.adobe. Believe it or not, if you drop it, it creates an AI model of voice. It is unreal. It is absolutely the most insane thing on the planet.
Well, and I think that, sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's a good example of, when we first started talking about like the intimidation behind it, like, are we all going to get replaced? And it's like, it's a great example of how you still have to have the skill set that you have. You're just taking it to a different level now using those. We're not replacing your job. You're not getting kicked out. It's that you can take it and enhance everything that you're doing and make it that much better. And it almost makes you more valuable.
Well, yeah, and then, sorry, one of the tools that I definitely would really recommend if you do long form content and you want to get on the shorts train, we use Immersively, which used to be Opus AI. Love it, amazing. You can create templates that are brand standard, makes captions, cuts bites pretty darn well, and talk to Jeremiah afterwards if you want his opinion on it. But the difference between going through and manually marking points to put into the vertical aspect ratio and have to be under 60 seconds and all that, Immersively is great for pulling that out of a 30-minute, hour-long podcast, video, anything like that. It's amazing, and we were already getting paid to do the full-length video, and they asked me, well, can you do shorts and can you do them quickly? It's really amazing, and it's a very affordable platform. I think it's like $19 a month or something. It's very affordable. You can turn it on, turn it off once a month. But it's doing the work that we would have already been doing, and there's no reason that our senior videographer needs to be marking points to go and do shorts. Like, that's pleb work. We use AI for that. We use Immersively for that. I would rather him be focused on getting a shot list together, setting up like what materials and what tools we're going to need to do a good photo shoot, a good video shoot. There's no reason he needs to waste 2 hours of his time to get sections to cut 60-second clips. There's no reason for that.
I always say it's like music. I was telling Greg this. Some of us started out with records, and then the cassette came out, CDs came out. Did music change by the time we got to Pandora? Did music change?
Music did.
Music and medium. And so, like, to me, it's a matter of, I see a lot more like a medium. I think in the future, it's the same way I started shooting film, and now we have everybody in the world can shoot up video, do it for a day. Right? That took a level of craftspersonship and creativity. At the same time, if you consider the idea that down the road we're going to have a point where it's like, oh, you want an AI one, and here's what we'll upsell, or do you want us to handcraft it? And then the clients that handcraft it, we all get payday and have more fun, and the ones that AI, we make payday and don't care, right? We just move on fun. And I think that's the reality that we'll get to. Universal is figured out. Everybody works in directing technology there, and that's the biggest fear is people being able to create without their control.
I mean, when you look at tools that are now going to be on like pixel phones, like what is a picture? I mean, you can manipulate it to the point of, I mean, it's creating stuff that didn't exist. So, I mean, it's definitely changing, but for all the creators in the room, like what's your thought, what's your feeling on where you were headed? You could have the AI version or the people-generated version. Are you doing kind of a mix of the two now, like mixed mediums? And like, how do you decide when to use like AI? We're using AI voiceover talent. Now, do you, instead of going out and getting drone shots, do you use AI, drone footage? Like, how do you pick and choose what to use and when?
I can answer that. I don't necessarily consider myself a creative or a creator, but we produce a lot of stuff. And there are limits, obviously. One of the benefits to handcrafting something is the specificity of the creative and also your client's taste. It's still really hard to make an image look just like Innovation Portal without using images of Innovation Portal, right? Or it's still really hard to create a drone shot that looks just like Innovation Portal without. And after you spend all the time prompting it and iterating it over and over again, you could have come out here and shot it, So I think in the future, it'll be a blended approach. I think that's what it is now. I think, people are coming out with tools that are making it, faster and simpler and easier, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to replace the need for some sort of organic piece of it, at least not yet. Think about like the amount of data they would have to have in order for me to be able to say like, create a drone video of the University of South Alabama, at dawn and, in the rain, I think at some point in time they would have to actually shoot that or feed it that data in order for it to recreate it, right? Otherwise it would just be guessing. And maybe sometimes the guess would be correct, but rarely. That being said, like a lot of the things you're seeing AI being used for, so if you asked about video, I think it's the more conceptual stuff, where like you don't go into it with a preconceived notion of how it's going to look. It's more about just like the idea, what you're trying to convey. And if it gives you something that you like or you can work with or you think is representative of the concept, then it works. It's kind of like, did y'all see that? I was asking you guys earlier this. McDonald's just came out with a few commercials, and it's like, they're like dance videos, and they're based in the future, and the people look like anime, and and you can tell an engine, like, you want a video that looks like that, and then in theory, as long as it's close on the other side, like, it's usable. You put a tag on it, you put a song with it, but if you try to tell it, to make it look like they're dancing at Radio City Music Hall, in certain types of clothes, or et cetera, at that point, it's just guessing.
Okay, so I got to cut it off, but I knew this was going to happen because every time we've had these conversations, they just keep going and going. So we worked time in that we were formally going to stop, but feel free to stick around. These guys are going to stick around for a little bit, have some conversations, keep the conversation going. Real quick, I would like to introduce you all to Kai. Hi, Kai. So Kai actually does a, here, I'm just going to hand the mic over to him. Thank